Hello, and welcome to another Fantasy Premier League video. My name is Steve, and we're off to a decent start in the 24-25 campaign. The seller got a goal and an assist with max bonus and a clean sheet for 14 points, which is currently the biggest score so far in the game week, with only the Spurs vs Leicester game remaining. Thankfully, I had him as captain, which has contributed to the better than average start that my team has got off to. He assisted Jota in the game, who was one of my two risky picks heading into the 24-25 season, as I'm not entirely sure how long he'll hold his spot up front for. But considering he's been scoring all preseason and scored in the first run-out against Ipswich, I think Jota's place in the team is pretty safe for now. His 8 points at 17% ownership is huge. The most captain player of the game week was Isak at home to Southampton, who actually only managed an assist in the match where Newcastle actually went down to 10 men after only 28 minutes played, with Fabian Schär completely losing his head, putting his forehead against Brereton Diaz, who absolutely made the most of it and drew the red card and earned himself as the villain of St. James's Park for the rest of the match. Now, that red card definitely impacted both Isak and Gordon's potential returns, which is not ideal for my team. However, given how highly Isak was captained, it's actually worked out in my favour in terms of overall rank. Now, unfortunately, Arsenal made a pretty significant dent in my rank as Saka returned 12 points and all the popular defensive assets played and kept clean sheets. However, I am currently inside the top 10% of players so far this game week, but it isn't quite over yet, with big players like Solanke, Son, and Porro all still yet to play. Now, so far, I am pretty happy with the start to the season, but we do have some issues already, mainly with Jarell Quansah. But also, Barco didn't start or get onto the pitch either. But I'm currently not too worried about him, as in my structure and strategy, Barco was only destined to sit on my bench. So today's video will largely focus on why I think Quansah has to go, as well as some other key performances that are worth noting from players, from player performances this weekend. And with that being said, remember to give this a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, especially if you get any value out of the following content. And as always, I've put various timestamps below so you can jump through to the sections that interest you the most. Right. Excuse me. So Quansah has to go. Now, unfortunately, my integrated development environment had an update overnight that has caused some issues with the prototype that I have been using on the channel, which is annoying because I did have some pretty key stats and figures that I had ready to show you all today. I wasn't actually able to solve that problem, so we are using the FPL website as of right now. So one of those stats that I did want to show you was that Quansah has already had 30,000 net transfers out already this game week, meaning he is already about 30% or so through a price drop. He might actually drop in price before the deadline this weekend. Now, I did tag Quansah as two of my riskiest players that I had put into my starting 11. And I was hoping that I was going to get at least a few games out of Quansah, hoping that he was actually going to cement his spot in that team. But it does look like he has already lost his place in that Liverpool starting lineup. He was subbed off at half time. It's only 45 minutes into the match. And the specific comments that Slot made after the match mean I think he's highly unlikely to start the next Brentford game. So we'll just note some of Slot's comments that were of importance. Now, Slot was asked about the difference between the first half and the second half. And in the first half, he was specifically asked about losing too many balls in the first half. Slightly quoting, slightly paraphrasing here. When he was asked about losing too many balls, Slot said, "Not so much that we lose the balls too much. I thought we lost far too many duels." So they were aggressive, which led to 3 yellow cards, but in a good way aggressive, talking about the Ipswich lads. And we didn't cope with that well enough, in my opinion. If you want to win over here, you need to go a step up in terms of winning your duels first and make it a fight out of it. So his English is a little bit not quite grammatically correct there, but basically what he's saying is there wasn't enough fight in the Liverpool team when they were defending. And it was he made a lot of comments about losing duels. And then was asked about some other things in the press conference, and he then commented a little bit later on that Ibu Konate came in, and from the start he won his duels from the number 9. So Konate came on at halftime for Jarell Quansah. And so, to be fair, I did actually make some notes in my match notes about Quansah not being too strong in the air, particularly around both defensive and attacking corners, in that he was barely getting off the ground and challenging for the ball. However, I did think he was good on the ball when the ball was on the deck, and that he made some good tackles throughout that first half. So I can only guess that it was the aerial duels that got him pulled off at halftime. Now, his substitution at halftime did catch me as a bit of a surprise. I was actually kind of wondering what was going on, but having listened to Slot, he brought up the duels often. And so I can only imagine that he must have mentioned this to Quansah during preseason or throughout training, and that he needed to see some sort of improvement in that Ipswich fixture. However, if he hasn't mentioned anything to Quansah, it is pretty rough to lose your spot after about 45 minutes into the match. And Quansah looked pretty unhappy sitting in the dugout at halftime when Slot was leaning over the seat and having words to him before kickoff in the second half. Now, putting all these things together, I think this means that Quansah has basically lost his spot already. I am predicting that Konate will actually start the match in Gameweek 2. However, I do not think that this will be Quansah's spot lost forever. He will surely work on it in training and get the opportunity again. But for Game Week 2, I think Quansah was almost certainly going to start on the bench. Now, I do have a short list of replacements that I will just briefly touch on, but I haven't made any decisions, and I do have some football still to watch. I actually spent the day trying to get my website back up and running. Haven't even seen the City versus Chelsea fixture yet. I've only seen the highlights of that. But in my short list of replacements for Quansah, I have 2 candidates that were immediately down on paper as soon as I saw the halftime substitution. And that was Quansah at Villa, so Ezri Quansah, and Hall at Newcastle. Now, unfortunately, Quansah has a rough game at home to Arsenal this week, but then has a beautiful run of fixtures. Now, he was tentatively in my thoughts as a potential replacement for Quansah if Quansah didn't end up cementing his spot. But I did think that Quansah would at least get 2 games of run out before I would have had to make that move. I thought he'd get at least 2 games before he was dropped, if he was going to get dropped. Getting dropped after 45 minutes is pretty rough, and so I'm not at all keen on bringing in Quansah and having to play him against Arsenal straight away. I guess I could dip into the bench and play someone like Harwood Bellis against Nottingham Forest at home. It is very hard to tell how Southampton will perform against a proper 11 on the pitch. I couldn't really gather much from the Southampton matches. They were playing a 10-man Newcastle United. However, in that Newcastle game, Hall did look to be pretty decent. He was getting forward. He was on a lot of set pieces, a lot of corners. He was even taking some shots from some dead ball situations. And with the red card to Fabian Schär, that probably means that Kraft will be in as the other centre-back, meaning Dan Burn will still be the left centre-back, meaning that Hall's position is probably even more secure than what it was without that red card. So those are the couple of candidates. I do need to have a serious think about both of them because Quansah comes with very little attacking threat. He's basically only be in there for clean sheets, which was why Quansah was in the team to start with, but I'm much more confident in the defensive abilities of the Liverpool lineup than I am in the Newcastle team, in the Aston Villa team, sorry. And so I'm not entirely sure which way I'm going to go there, but my team selection video later in the game week will have the replacement all fleshed out and my reasoning behind who I am going with. So make sure to subscribe and check in on that video later in the week. There's probably some other options to consider too, so I will add to that list of potential replacements. But for right now, Quansah will be getting sold immediately out of my team, which is pretty frustrating as I was hoping to bank a transfer, but being the pro risk manager that I am, I did go with a relatively risky 4.5 million option in Quansah in the back line, which is 15 minutes off banking a clean sheet in that first game. Unfortunately, we do have to act straight away, which is part of the risk in some of the picks that I do go with. So I'll just note some noteworthy performances from fixtures around the place for candidates that we should put onto our watch lists if they're not already on our watch lists or not already in our teams. So on Eze, he was robbed of a goal because the referee blew his whistle too early. Blew his whistle about half a second before the ball actually clipped the post and went in from Eze's direct free kick. Now, had the referee actually delayed blowing that whistle, I am pretty sure that goal would have been given, because the reason that he blew the whistle was there was a bit of a kerfuffle on the free kick on the edge of the 18, but Eze just blasted the ball straight at the goal, scored it, and so the kerfuffle that was happening on the edge of the 18 actually had no impact on the goal going in, and so that probably would have been given to Eze had the referee delayed his whistle. So we're a little unlucky there. There was also an assist that Eze got for Edouard, but Edouard was just offside the entire move. He should have delayed his run, slowed down, because he was in a great position to receive the ball, which he did score, but he just did not check across the line. Eze did look to tire around the 70-minute mark. Now, it does sound like it was incredibly hot out on the pitch, and Eze hadn't had a lot of preseason minutes, and so this is probably to be expected. So an okay performance from Eze, could have been a lot better had he pulled in those returns. Elsewhere in the Palace team, Mateta looked really good. He looked really sharp. Kamada, who is Elise's replacement, had some very heavy passes who could have set up some big chances, but he wasn't quite as clinical as he could have been in those deliveries. And he didn't seem to get too heavily involved. I was trying to keep an eye out for him, but he didn't seem to be on the ball in too many dangerous situations. I still think Palace are a good team to invest in. Obviously, I'm pretty unhappy that they conceded 2 goals. Munoz did get the assist for the own goal, though, and he was still getting very far forward, so I am quite happy with that pick. Bruno Fernandes. So I have noticed a change in Fernandes over pre-season, which looks to have flowed into the first game of the 24-25 season. I had tagged Fernandes in the past as showing frustration when other players in the team were making little mistakes. Now, he looks to have completely removed that from his game, and he is only showing frustration about his own mistakes, and has been across preseason and in that first game. He was involved in everything in this match. His work rate was immense. He was seriously getting involved all over the pitch, putting in a huge effort and acting like a leader. Great performance from Bruno Fernandes. I think anyone who had him in their FPL teams were very unlucky not to come away with a return there. He had a couple of very big chances. It just did not quite go in. So probably looking like a pretty good asset, especially with Manchester United looking to have strengthened and probably going to be a much more formidable team in the 24-25 season. And one of those additions was Mazroui. Now, this lad looks absolute class. Confident passes, very dynamic, lots of movement. Looks like he's going to get very involved in the attack too. Now, outstanding first game out, especially considering he joined the squad very late. He is one to keep an eye on. Came away with some bonus points and a clean sheet. I think he came away with 8 points. Definitely one to keep an eye on. But then sticking with United, Martinez had an absolute mare. A couple of just terrible decisions. It wasn't really his touch or his passing. I mean, some of his passes were a bit wayward in the game, but his decision making was just horrible. One particular event, he went in sliding in from behind, taking the man out, the opposition man out on the ball, which also took him out of the game as he was on the floor and sliding in. Referee played advantage. A dangerous counter-attack ensued. Ended up being like a 3-on-2. It was unnecessary in a not dangerous area of the pitch at all. So that was the first mistake. Then there was another horrible challenge from behind from Martinez against a man who was heading towards the corner late in the match and was already smothered by both Martinez and Rashford. So the man had his back to goal, was heading away from goal towards the corner flag, and Martinez just rushes in, jams him in the back, and gives an attacking free kick near the penalty box, completely unnecessarily. He was actually a huge liability in the game. He's also useless defending corners, and I have no idea why he's in the mixer. And I'm really wondering whether or not we have a set-piece coach looking at these things, because seriously, he should probably be marking the short corner or a post or nothing else. I mean, he was direct smack bang in the middle. He was even getting in the way of some of the United men taking up space where they could have actually got up and challenged. Horrible game. I don't understand why he is in the corners. Yeah. Let's just hope that he is potentially moved out onto the wings where he can't have such a detriment to the game. Even Toney wasn't even on the team sheet for the Palace fixture, not even as a substitute. So this means he is almost certainly going to get sold from the Brentford team. That probably means that Mbeumo is back on penalties and that Wissa will likely be playing the number 9. Wissa is often subbed off around the 70-minute mark or so, so if you are looking at a Brentford asset, probably shouldn't be because their fixtures are pretty tough at the start of the season, but Wissa did score a goal from memory. But Ivan Toney is likely on the move. I'm not entirely sure where, but he could be a steal if he is heading to another Premier League club. Semenyo, I tagged as my dark horse in the enabler bracket in my video last week, saying that he could probably find himself a lot more central with Solanke leaving. Now, this prediction looks to have come true with Semenyo starting in the number 9 position. Now, it wasn't until the 87th minute, but Semenyo did score a goal. He also had a few shots throughout the match too. The goal he scored was poor clearance from, I think it was Toffolo, who kicked the ball straight into the face of Murillo about 2 yards away from him. The ball ping-ponged around, landed at Semenyo's feet, who shot from 3 yards out with the keeper on the floor and scored the goal. Now, I'm not entirely sure who's on penalties with Solanke leaving at Bournemouth. It's probably going to be Kluivert, but there is a small chance that it could also be Semenyo. And if he is playing up front with Pens at 5.5 million, he could be really high up in the 5.5 million enabler bracket in midfield, as he was reclassified as a midfielder this season. So he's definitely one to keep an eye on. And then finally, just on the Chelsea team lineup, I mentioned in my final video that Maresca rolled out a really weird team in the final preseason fixture. And I did try and make a prediction on who was going to start in my last video based on that team that was lined up. Now, my guess was that the defensive 6 players that started the final preseason fixture were probably going to start this fixture as well, but I had no idea what was going to be going on with the forward line, and so I predicted Sanchez at the back, Gusto right back, Fofana and Cole the centre backs, Cucurella at left back, with Enzo and Latvia as the CDMs. That was the back 6 that I was predicting. I had no idea what was going on with the front line and thought it might be Palmer on the right, Nkunku, Cam, Sterling on the left, with either Guiu or Jackson up front, with Guiu probably being favoured through Jackson's lack of minutes, but I did say that it wouldn't at all surprise me if Jackson started. The actual lineup had Sanchez in goal, Gusto, Fofana, Colwill and Cucurella, so I got the back 4 correct and the goalkeeper. However, Caicedo and Latvia started in the CDM positions instead of Enzo and Latvia, which was what I predicted. And Enzo was moved forward into that cam role. So Caicedo, Latvia, and Enzo all on the pitch, with Palmer on the right and Nkunku on the left, and Jackson starting up front. Now, this fixture was on this morning, and I haven't actually managed to sit down and watch the 90 minutes. I did see some highlights, but it's very hard to gauge what was going on from the highlights. But I will be sitting down to watch this match. And I will have some more information for you all about Nkunku. But I did mention in my last video that I was very worried about Nkunku's place in the team. And that is why I actually opted to upgrade him to Diogo Jota and downgrade Trent to Gvardiol in my final team selection. Nkunku started on the bench in that final preseason match, and Maresca actually played Dewsbury Hall in the cam. So he's tried out Nkunku in cam, Dewsbury Hall in cam, and now Enzo Fernandez was starting in cam. I mean, this is all on paper in a 4-2-3-1 formation, but Maresca does prefer to play a 3-2-4-1 in possession, which, from what I can see in this I mean, I got to watch the match, but I would expect it would be Gusto coming up on the right wing to have Palmer and Enzo as the dual cams when in possession. But that would have left Nkunku on the left wing in front of Mudryk and Sterling. And I don't really know how Nkunku plays as a winger. So I guess it could have also been that Gusto was sitting back, Palmer was actually playing right wing, and it was Enzo and Nkunku playing in the cam roles, with Cucurella moving forward up on the left wing. But like I said, I do need to watch the match. But Nkunku looks like he is becoming potentially a bit of a utility player, which will make it quite hard for him to, well, to get used to his position in the team, and also for the other players around him to get used to finding him. And so I'm probably even more concerned about Nkunku moving forward. Thankfully, I don't have him in my team, but he will definitely be one to keep an eye on moving forward. And all right, well, that wraps up this video. So don't forget to like and subscribe and leave us a comment to tell us what you think. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all again for my team selection video later this week.